right, shalom. Shalom, shalom. Call Halayim Le Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, better known as GMS, who will well. Peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect, the tabernacle of David, beginning with the 144,000 and the rest of the men, women, and children out of the 12 tribes whom Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai will ultimately have mercy upon in these last days. Part of my voice, I'm kind of losing it, but I'm your brother Matazabath from the branch of the Great Millstone here in Melbourne, Australia. And this is going to be a take 2 because I tried to record a part 2 to this, but the whole time the audio wasn't connected. So, Spirit wanted me to do it again, and I'm doing it again. It is what it is. But if you haven't checked out part 1, go and watch it. All right, because we went heavy into it. And in part 2, I wanted to bring this further home by giving more evidence proving that the Khazars are indeed of the stock of Esau Edom. Now, you have this book, which I'm going to share the screen. All right. And this book is entitled, Who is Esau Edom? All right. Now, this was written by Charles A. Wiseman, and Charles A. Wiseman, through his extensive research, he's going to tell you that the Khazars are indeed Edomites, but he's also going to quote Arthur Koestler's book, right? So if we jump down to page 10, I'm going to cut straight to the point. We're going to start right here. It says the Khazars were a nomadic people who had no traces of Hebraic culture, and they had been following a pagan and sex-oriented religion until they had officially embraced Judaism in 740 AD. Now, while rejecting Christianity and Mohammedanism, the Ish author and historian Arthur Koestler also concludes that the majority of East European Jews, and hence a world Jewry, is of Khazar and not of Semitic origin, which that word there should be Shemitic. It says in the beginning of his book, he states, now this is Charles Wiseman just quoting what we established in part 1 when the dude in his video was reading from his book, right? Now it says, the large majority of surviving Jews in the world is of Eastern European, and thus perhaps mainly of Khazar origin. If so, this would mean that their ancestors came not from the Jordan, but from Volga, not from Canaan, but from the Caucasus, and that genetically they are more closely related to Hun, Yagar, and Magyar tribes than to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, if we come up here, it says Koestler then devotes the remainder of his 255-page book to prove this premise, right? For instance, a record of a letter by a Khazar king shows that he traced his people to Noah's son Japheth, not Shem, and to the Japheth's grandson Togarmah, the ancestor of all Turkish tribes. Now, again, we've already mentioned in part 1 that was done based upon deceitfulness, right? And for political view. Okay. And ChatGPT pretty much covered all those bases. Again, you go and watch part 1. Now, it says the Khazar government was destroyed by the Slavs of Russia in 1016 AD. Around 1200 AD, the land was invaded by the hordes of Genghis Khan. These two events caused large numbers of Khazars to migrate to Poland and Western Russia, forming the cradle of Western Jewry. It says, as the Khazars left their homeland of Khazaria and migrated north and west, they lost their name and became known as Jews. Their Yiddish language and alphabet is not that of the Israelites, Phoenician Greek style, but an amalgamation of Aramaic, medieval German, Slavic, and Russian dialects. Now, um this is what this man stated. It says the best historical evidence therefore shows that the Jews are not descended directly from the Israelites of the Bible, but derive much of their ancestry from the Khazars and the other people of Turkish Asiatic blood. The Khazars are also of Edomite stock. Where's he getting this from? It says, and both stocks make up the present day Jews. As the historian H.G. Wells states, the Idumeans, Edomites, were made Jews, and a Turkish people, Khazars, were mainly Jews in South Russia. The main part of Jewry never was in Judea and had never come out of Judea. He goes on to say, according to the Jewish Encyclopedia, the original stock of the Khazars came from the land of Edom. That's twice now. That's twice. Meaning these people that are claiming to be us in the Holy Land, they told on themselves. They know that the Khazars are Edomite. We get some more. It says, Hasdai Ibn Shaprat, who was foreign minister to Abdal Rahman, Sultan of Cordova, in his letter to King Joseph of the Khazars about 960, speaks of the tradition according to which the Khazars once dwelt near the Seir Mountains. That's key. It says the Seir Mountains are none other than the original land of Esau, Edom. Thus dwelt Esau in Mount Seir. Genesis 36 and 8. Let me drop down. It says the Seir Mountains were the home of Edomites for nearly a millennium. Thus, it should be no surprise that migrants from that land would recall the name of their original homeland. If the Khazars did originally dwell near the Seir Mountains, then the Khazars and thus world Jewry are racially of Edomite stock. Wow. But how and where did Edomites get to Khazaria, right? Because that'll be the question that people ask, right? There is evidence, that in the 6th century BC, okay, some of the Edomites fled their homeland of Seir and migrated north. After the fall of Jerusalem in 586 BC, the Edomites began to press northward. Now, he gives the wrong precept because Ezekiel 36 and 5 is speaking about the Holy Land. They would take over the Holy Land along with the residue of the heathen. That's why they are in the Holy Land today, right? The extent and ultimate destination of this northward trek is not found in history, but it is likely that it brought some Edomites to the region of Khazaria, right? The Edomites were also cast out of Palestine and dispersed in a different direction in 70 AD. So we can pretty much stop there. And then down here, it gives you his sources. So you can pause the video, take a screenshot, Google these sources, and look it up yourself. Do your own due diligent research. The Khazarians are the same stock of Edom. And we proved that in part 1. If you haven't watched part 1 of this, go do so. Because we brought out some hella information from Chat GPT that pretty much exposed this double. All right. And so you have to understand, this is why, the scripture says to study to show thyself approved, but it also says when you get a new tab here, Salakia. Let's get Ecclesiastes 12 and 12 and 12. It says, and further by these, my son, be admonished. The word admonish means to warn. Of making many books, there is no end, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. You see? But, this is what happens when what he did, he just read that book. And see, this is where the disconnect comes because, see, Jake will read a book and go, oh, see, just because this guy said it, no, man. You got to pull it for other sources. You have to go in. Now, he did mention in the beginning of this video that he had like a couple of books, but in this video, he only pulled out 2 sources that kind of backed each other. The second book just pretty much, I'm guessing, because I haven't watched the whole video, but It just pretty much backs up what Arthur Koestler pretty much said, because he went on to say that they back each other. But we just read out of this book right here, Who is Esau Edom by Charles A. Wiseman. And he broke it down and said, no, according to the Jewish Encyclopedia, they are of the stock of Edom. And they had historical evidence proving that in the sixth century when they migrated. And then this guy here, okay, Hasdai Ibn Shapur, he was the one that spoke to King Joseph, the same King Joseph that told him they are of the seed of Japhet, the sons of Japhet. But Hasdai was like, wait a minute, the Khazars once dwelt near Seir Mountains. So what is you talking about? Look it up. It's called the Khazars Correspondence. Read it yourself. So we're going to end it. One last precept. Hebrews 12. And no, I'm tripping. Salakia, Hebrews 5 and 12. Right? For when for the time ye ought to be teachers, ye have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of the Most High, and are become such as have need of milk and not of strong meat, right? Because see, the milk part represents the basic foundation. Who are the Edomites, according to Bible? Knowing their characteristics, knowing everything through prophecy. Once you understand prophecy, then you can go into secular history, and then that secular history has to align with prophecy. Does not the scripture says, let the Most High be true and every man a liar? In part one, if we establish how this devil used craftiness by going and conquering the lands through the force of the sword, through violence, and calling those lands, naming themselves after the lands that they conquer. That's why today they're named themselves Americans, Canadians, Europeans, Australians, Italians, you name it. Okay, but there are none of those things. This is why you have to follow the prophecy. Once you understand the prophecy, it's not that hard to pull up information and to cross-reference what it is that you're reading. You just took one book and thought that was the end all be all because a so-called Jew in Arthur Koestler, who wrote the 13th Tribe, pretty much laid it on a line by saying, well, they can't be of the stock. They're not Shemitic. No, the Khazars are Shemitic because they're Edomites. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, man. that's what we on. So hey, that's pretty much it. This part 2 is just going to be, no more under. I try to keep it under 20 minutes. So that's pretty much it I wanted to share. Lord's will, this was edifying, straight to the point. And I want to give all praise, glory, and honor be to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakah HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, better known as GMS, who were well. Peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect, the tabernacle of David. It's on to the next, Lord's will. Shalom.